Hello and welcome everyone who's joining us for this Emerging Payments Association Asia hot topic briefing. Wherever you are, it might be morning, afternoon, evening. I think we have quite a global sign up for this webinar, and welcome to everyone also who's watching the recording. We're always happy to hear feedback. So for those of you who are joining here live, please, if you can, add in the chat what location you are from. And also, please feel free to use that chat through the webinar to make it a little bit more three-dimensional. So I'm Camilla Bullock, and I am the CEO of the Emerging Payments Association Asia. And today we have the pleasure of co-creating with Crunchfish, who you will meet in just a second. Joakim Samuelsson is the CEO, and then we also have Mika Hartman, who is our ambassador based in Thailand, and we have May Lam, who is the chair of the Emerging Payments Association's Asia's advisory board, but also the CIO of Australia Payments Plus, which is the infrastructure in Australia. And to moderate the session today, I'm super pleased to have Monica Josuya, who is the Chief Expansion and Innovation Officer at Emerging Payments, and she is based in Delhi. But before we dive into today, can we just flick to the next slide, please? We find it important that you know what we do. We often hear that EPA, what is actually the mission you're out there to do? You do a lot of different things. Are you a traditional branch organization? Yes, maybe slightly more agile, I would say. Are you a think tank? Yes, we are also that. We're leading some of the most tech innovative, forward-thinking discussions in the industry. And we also pick up on challenges, opportunities. So there is a lot of opportunity, events and creations that we have where you can land your thought leadership or come together and co-create with us. And we do this across APAC regions. So I think on the next slide, we have a QR code to help you to stay connected with us. So you scan that and you can join our WhatsApp community where we land some of the events and when we're convening the industry. This year, we have been to 10 countries. We hosted 31 events, 920 payments leaders and industry professional has come through those times when we convened the industry. And we also participated in 16 external events. We also welcome all our new members, which is 18 to date this year. And before we get started, we have a slide also, lots of different ways to stay connected. So if you aren't, look at that, follow us on LinkedIn or click that WhatsApp link. Now we're going to dive into the topic of today, which is all about rethinking payments, online, offline, and cash, powering the next wave of resilient digital payments. I think resilience is one of the topics that's on the front of many payments leaders, but not just payments leaders anymore. It's the whole financial service industry, governments globally. It looks quite different from what it did 10 years ago. So with that, Monica, I hand over to you to lead this discussion.
Thank you, everyone. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon from wherever you are joining us today. Thanks to Crunchfish for enabling this conversation, a very important one in rethinking payments online, offline, and cash. And just like Camilla said earlier, across Asia Pacific and globally, we are seeing payment ecosystems at a very big turning point. Digital payments have become the backbone of commerce, yet we have outages, we have serious cyber incidents, and there are significant connectivity gaps still within the region, which remind us how fragile trust really is and how we need to focus on resilience and build this into systems today. Today, we are going to hear from leaders across the ecosystem spanning networks, national infra, and technology innovation, and how we can deliver payment systems that are seamless, inclusive, and always on. I'm really happy to moderate this discussion and even more delighted to welcome our distinguished panel. And I'm going to start off by introducing each one of the speakers who we have and listening to about 30 seconds about what they do in their everyday lives. And then we are going to jump right in. So if I can go to May. May, you're representing AP Plus. Tell us what you do in about 30 seconds.
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm May. I'm the CIO at AP Plus, Australian Payment Plus. So AP Plus was born from the amalgamation of three domestic rail, which are the debit card network, the real-time payment, which is MPP, and also BPay, which is a secure bill payment. And also, as Camilla mentioned, I'm the chair of the advisory board at EPAA.
Thank you so much, May. Mika, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me. So my core work is with Krung Thai Card. We are one of the largest merchant acquirers here in Thailand. We have done a lot of first in digital payments, especially focusing on cross-border like Alipay, Alipay Plus, and other digital wallets into the Thai market. So cross-border inbound, we're doing a lot of things that on that sector. And at the same time, I'm also the Thailand ambassador for EPAA too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mika, and welcome, Joachim.
Thank you. Joachim Samuelsson. I'm the CEO of Crunchfish. We do have a solution for resilience. That's why we are sort of interested to sponsor this event. So we're very much about rethinking payments. We believe that, as many of you have said earlier here, that it's up for a change. And we have a solution. We've been focused on Asia a long time, particularly India. And we're very glad now. We are a member of the EPAA, so very happy to have this as our really first public event with EPAA.
Welcome, everyone. And without further ado, let's dive right in. And I'm really looking forward to actually hearing perspectives on our first question, which actually helps us to understand what we are discussing today. So this question is open to everyone, but I'll start off by addressing this to May first. So digital payments are now the backbone of commerce, but disruptions and outages are on the rise. From your perspectives, whether you are representing a network, infra, and the technology side, what does resilience actually mean in payments today? And why is it this mission critical? So May.
Thanks, Monica. So I think that we do represent a network infrastructure technology. So first off, as a company, AP Plus was created for the reasons of resilience. So AP Plus came together during the COVID time when in-person transactions were done and online and mobile pay wallet transactions are more surging. And with a real impact on our domestic debit network, which had until then only be more as in-person than online. And that really exposed the risk of fragmentation in our payments ecosystem, where the three domestic payment routes, the domestic debit card network, as mentioned, the real-time payment, and also the national secure bill payment, each house in different and individual entities, each investing separately, and none of them on their own were big enough to match the speed and the scale of like the global schemes and the competition. So that created a case of the merger. And it itself is a story of resilience and ensuring a secure domestic and resilient payment infrastructure that are solvent and have a longevity to go with the volume as well. So today we think about the journey on about almost 4 years since the amalgamation, that we think about resilience across all rails. It means ensuring that the platform millions of Australians rely on every day are robust, available, secure 24/7, and all around the year. We build redundancy into our core rail and stress testing at the peak volumes and running crisis exercise, for example. And how and also one of the things that I can share with everyone is that our real-time payment infrastructure is currently can handle 6 times of the payment volume and than the actual. Yeah, and the other thing that is that a disruption of our infrastructure can mean that everyone's wages are not being paid, merchants are unable to take payment, and even the household are left uncertain. And that's why we take everything at heart. We look at the public interest of everything we do, and we see that is the mission critical, is our license to operate. And also we continue to invest that on continuous upgrade from the technology infrastructure perspective, the cyber defense, and also the industry coordination and collaboration, which we will unpack more later.
Thank you so much, May, for your inputs. I'd love to hear from Mika now.
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to create some context on what we're discussing today, because on digital payments, there's many points of failure. So many times we take it for granted that we use a credit card or digital wallet and the transaction is done in a few seconds. But actually the flow of data and the information and the networks that need to be in place and actually functioning. So when you think about a digital payment from a mobile wallet, obviously you need to access your credentials on the mobile phone. And then when you scan, or maybe you use NFC on a point of sale equipment, that equipment then needs to send over that data, the information, over either more today being more mobile internet connected, and then either then LAN connected, then it goes to the host processing system, then it goes to the gateway or processor, then it goes to the card scheme or digital wallet aggregator for authorization, and then it flows back and it has to go all through the same hops almost all the way to the, let's say, like for the point of sale. For some systems, if there's no message back and you don't print the point of sale, the transaction is not successful. So then you need to reverse the transaction or do a refund or something like that. So it's quite complicated. Or even some cases like for digital wallet payments, what we have seen is that the customer is still waiting for authorization on their mobile phone and they still haven't got it sometimes because maybe the network at that time, at that second, the network was down and they didn't get the message and some things like that. So there's a lot of complexity that can happen and a lot of points of failure. Now, in April this year, Spain had a power blackout. And so that was really a major 10 hours. There was no power, and some places it was almost over a day that there was no electricity. So imagine mission critical payments. So like in the health industry, maybe insurance industry, or other industries where you need to prepay to access some critical, like transportation, for example. And when the networks are down, how do you transact anymore? Or even the ATMs, when people rush to the ATM to get cash out, what happened was those ATMs that still had some sort of backup functioning, they ran out of cash because people sort of go to the backup of the cash system. So definitely in the payment space, there's a mission critical, but also there's a lot of issues that can cause for a failure. So it's quite critical for, like, our discussion today is find a method or a system or orchestration to have it more easier to make sure that payments are made 100%.
Absolutely. And Joachim, now that we've heard both from May as well as Mika, what do you think? Because you're helping solve this problem for multiple countries through your solution.
Yeah, no, I think May and Mika beautifully, I think, set the stage that it is important. And I think the way systems has been designed is what we would call the happy flow. It works when everything works. And as Mika described, that there are many, many things that can go wrong. And I think digital payments is a public utility. It's almost like electricity. It needs to work. And there is a need to rethink payments fundamentally, but still obviously build it in such a way that we are not just throwing in a hand grenade into these working systems. We need to migrate into something which is much more resilient than what we're seeing today, because the current systems is essentially built around that it works when everything works, and that is essentially what needs to be changed.
I think works when everything works. I think that's the main problem that we're trying to solve here, because we can't assume that everything is going to work when we think it will. And we've seen plenty of the, examples of this in the last couple of years in the region that we are focusing on. But let's actually dive in and really unpack this for the audience in terms of what this actually means. So first question is, now when we look at network failures and we think about all the cyber incidents and all the news around it, we understand how resilience is mission critical for both trust as well as adoption of digital payments, going far and further beyond the served audience that we have right now. So first question to Mika is, Mika, when we think about resilience and how critical it is to consumer trust in digital payments, we know that networks have to deliver reliability across channels. And you just mentioned an example of it. Now, how are you building systems that ensure people can pay seamlessly, whether it is shopping online or making in-person purchases, despite potential disruptions? What are some of the practices that can widen this adoption of the ecosystem further than and what has really worked?
Yeah, so actually, to be honest, all payment companies and payment processors networks, they have built-in backup systems in the case, like we said, okay, like if something fails, if one connectivity fails, a lot of the cross-border connectivity, some in the early days they had only one lease line and through the same operator. So basically, if you had to transact send information, like for example to Visa, for example, so if you had just had one line and it's still on the same operator, even though you had another line, and if the operator had some issue, your connectivity went. So those are things that have been learned, so that you need to go through another operator and make sure that the physical connectivity is separate. So it's a real redundancy. So there's a lot of efforts to do like that, and to also the card schemes themselves, they have what we call the stand-in processing functionality. So basically, like for example, if a card issuer or merchant acquirer, if their system fails, then there's the backup that transactions can be processed on the backup systems from the merchants. And what we see today is like on the e-commerce side. So like in Thailand, we have the large marketplaces, the Shopee, the Lazadas. And so when we have the high volume traffic transaction days, like 9/9 just recently, so these transactions peak. And what we've seen that many of the payment gateways in the early days, they were not prepared for it. So the systems, they were overloaded with transactions. And so the transactions failed at the critical time when people wanted to purchase something on the marketplaces. So what's happening now, there's more orchestration, meaning that they have a system that can connect to multiple merchant acquirers in the market. And then they can shift the load in case that, these discrepancies or disruptions happen. Even the large merchants, if you talk about in-store payments, so in Thailand, most large merchants, they connect to multiple merchant acquirers in the market, and they all have these backup systems in case that these transactions might fail. So those are the things that currently in the market are being done, but obviously with the Crunchfish solution, it's a higher level in the sense that it's on another layer, which I think Joachim will explain more, so that we understand how that can help too.
Absolutely. And sorry, I was speaking on mute. And Joachim, actually, this is a great segue to bring this question to you. Now, from the technology perspective, which really has a power to make resilience invisible to the end user, what are some of the offline and interoperable solutions that you see that are most effective in supporting not just peer-to-peer transactions, but consumer payments? And these fit in seamlessly into the existing rails.
Yes, thank you. I think the best example where we do have offline today and also interoperability in some sense is the card rail. If you have a smart card, if you do have a smart card, you are very much offline. It's just a piece of plastic with a chip on, and you're very, as a payer, you're very much offline. And it's interoperable in the sense that thanks to the organization EMVCo, they put together standards that even if you have a system which have a MasterCard, you can still pay at the same terminal as someone who has a Visa card or whatever card. So that exists, but it is contained within the card rail. And I think it's a good example of what they've done in the card rail. They are, I think, the most sort of resilient offline and interoperable there is on the planet today. But as Mika said, we need to take this now to a more all rails perspective, to not just be confined to only card rails. But the model is good. What we believe it should be done is that you should have the ability to have a stored value on a mobile phone. That is one thing that we would like to add. So you just like cash, when you go to an ATM machine, you equip yourself with money that you have access to. For the card rail, that means that there is no credit risk if you're offline using that stored value. And also in the card rail, I think one limitation is that if it is host card emulated, which it is on a mobile, it doesn't really allow full offline. Someone needs, because the credentials are sitting in the cloud, so you need to get hold of those credentials. So either you as a payer or the card terminal needs to be online. So it's not fully offline. What we bring is a solution, which I think is necessary, which absolutely is fully offline. So you can transact just like cash. The other thing I believe is important is to widen the scope for not just thinking about paying to a car terminal. Certainly, it needs to be that needs to be there, and it is to a large extent there thanks to the smart cards. But we have to think also about, say, P2P transactions that you pay between people. But also a lot of, if I look at India, car terminals are not so. It's not, most merchants do not have car terminals. You are looking at more other solutions where there is sort of an app on the other side, a merchant app, and you need to sort of facilitate there as well. So we're looking at, I think the model from the card industry is good, and it is offline, as I said, with smart cards. But as Mika said, we need to lift this now to more across different sort of rails. We have to look at P2P, and we have to look at also paying towards basically a merchant app, which is not at all a car terminal. So that is what I think needs to happen, and I think that is the solution that we propose into the market.
Absolutely. May, if I can get your quick comments on this, because we keep speaking about the card rails and how obviously they spent a lot of years, 50 years and 60 years to perfect what really exists today. Just your quick comments on this before we move to the next question.
Yeah, I think that's yeah, I actually agree that, because I think payment is a mechanism for, is a mean to a trade or a mean to something, and the interoperability is key. And there's so many ways of go to market, the different segment to serve, whether it's a B2X and C2X. So I think that one of the key thing is that how do we continue to build trust and providing the choice that where it makes sense. It's not something that we can do, we do. It's something that it should be done, it need to be done, and have to be retained on that one. So just a quick comment on that.
Absolutely. I would totally agree with you. And payments, as it's becoming a utility, it actually needs to be able to replicate all the great principles that are already in place and see that go across and become more, I would say, almost percolate other kind of payment rails that are being set up. And some of them are just right now in the strategic phase. But let's actually move to the next question on this, May, because you're representing Australia's domestic payments provider. Much of your work is actually enabling fast, reliable, and secure electronic payments across very different user needs. So let's actually talk about the user and who are we trying to serve with even more digital payment options. So how do you see this approach ensuring inclusivity and resilience, especially for those who are less digitally native and tend to get left behind? Now, they rely on very basic payment services, but we are still pushing them a lot of innovations, like whether it's real-time payments, digital identity, and interoperable networks. How and what are some of the lessons that you think we should adopt from both platforms globally, as well as what can others learn from the Australian model?
Thanks, Monica. So I think kind of mentioned that before, inclusivity to us is giving people the choice at the right time and then for the right reason. And the other one is that the trust. So whether it's online, offline, cash, that have to have the trust element to do that. So speaking of AP Plus perspective, we are quite unique role. We understand that we provide an infrastructure. It spans across all segments, all different rails that is available in the country. So from FPOS, which is domestic card, from point of sales in person to online e-commerce to the real-time account to account, and also as a nation that we are setting the day for the bags to be sunset at 2030. So that's also moving that the volume onto MPP, and also having that transition away from the legacy bulk system. So that's quite a lot of things that we are changing in this landscape. So it's important for us to understand that while we are a young company, we are coming up about 4 years old, our brand are not. And they are the greatest asset that we have. We have very trust brand like BPay. It's been around since 1997. And some of a lot of the more like older generation like me, Australian, actually love the brand and is continue to rely on that, and which is a bill payment. So this is the brand that we nurture, we understand there's a need, and we continue to modernize and make it resilient. But we also understand that there's also generation for digital natives, and that the solution of mobile wallet, whether at the checkout online, QR payment, how can we provide a wallet as a service, that type of things, that we also ensure that there's a reliant infrastructure behind that. So that's also not being left behind. And at the same time, that I also want to call out the digital identity. I'm actually at a conference in Melbourne at the moment for FinTech Festival Intersect. There's a lot of conversation on the what is the future digital identity, what that means. So speaking of resilience, is providing another layer of trust, understanding who are we paying. For example, we have launched confirmation of payee. So that's to provide the trust layer for the payer to ensure that they are paying the person that they were paying, and to reduce the scam and the fraud perspective. And one more area is that as a nation that we understand that cash is here to stay. So that kind of like the offline interoperability is important. At the same time, that as a country, we're looking at what that scenario may look like in the future when we have, for example, off-ramp CBDC. So that is how can that mimic also the cash spend. And Australia is a large continent, and we do have a regional citizen and the people that we rely on the different type of payments. So I won't say that is anything that can learn from us, but I think that we are catered for the inclusivity, because the thing that we do, the decision that we make, is putting the public interest at heart of everything that we do.
I love this. And I actually wanted to ask one follow-up question. But before I do that, so for all the attendees who are actually listening to us, thank you so much for, first of all, joining in and for being participative. We are going to watch out for all the questions. So in case you have a question that pops up as you're listening to our panelists, please feel free to use the Q&A section, and we'll make sure that we are able to address each one of them to the panelists who are available. The second thing is that I have a follow-up question made to what you said. You mentioned very importantly that we are giving people choice. At the same time, we're also introducing different types of methods, because let's face it, there are many other type of payment systems. But there was something more critical, which is that your brand is the oldest and it's a very big asset. So when we think about resilience and what we're speaking about here, and there are occasions when that gets compromised, like how should brands such as yours and others be thinking about resilience in today's world, where the brand compromise tends to be the biggest, I would say, liability that happens when something like this happens in the current payment systems world? That's one question to you. And Joachim, I'd love for you to also participate and tell us if you've seen examples of that and how building resilience really helps. So first to me.
Yeah, so I think back to the resilient point. So if you look at our purpose for AP+, we have 3 purpose pillars. The first one is about the longevity and sustainability of the payment systems. And this is not negotiable. We ensure that while we're building that resilient infrastructure, there has to be a volume. Without volume, like we can build beautiful things, it doesn't matter. So it's how can we encourage the whole industry collaboration to bring the volume on it. And with the volume, yes, we are not for profit. We were never driven by profit. We are here to win the market share, because we believe that we have the volume, we can influence the pricing. And at the end of the day, how can we give back to the community? And I think that is the one part led to our second pillar, which is the trust. So we are driving the trust in the digital economy, and it's really key. And brand is one thing, but it's what we do that on the investment for cyber defense, for the risk management. But the risk management is not just own. Payment is a network asset. So we understand that the whole ecosystem and the supply chain. So how can we inject that kind of confidence with the people that we work with? So, and also Connect ID, the digital identity, is an exchange platform. So how can we ensure that we never see the data? We can hone into the data minimization and educate the ecosystem to share less data, but still be able to transact to the intent of it. And then the last but not least, I think it's important that we are the center but we are also a platform. How can we encourage, enable more innovation? We believe that more innovation will drive the competition and will drive the cost down, and also drive more creative problem solving, so that we can serve the underserved population better.
I love this. May you captured it so well. Trust, collaboration, scale, innovation. I mean, these are really the pillars of what will build the next resilient payment system, which we already have. But Joachim, very quick comments on this and what you just heard.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think without volume, there is nothing. Without trust, there is nothing. And without collaboration, there is nothing either. So I agree 100%. And we've understood, because we've been pushing our technology for a long time, but we've understood that what we need to start with is to get integrated with the payment network. A provider like AP Plus in Australia would be fantastic, a non-profit organization. But we recently announced, probably our biggest press release ever on Friday, that we are now integrating our technology into one of the world-leading payment networks. Because we start there. Because if you have the payment network, then you are sort of setting a standard that other, on the issuing side, on the payer side, they could come into, because then it is the network that may represent, that sets in a way the tone for the ecosystem. And by providing our technology into the network, and by the way, we do it for free. We offer the network for free, our technology. And then if we're going to monetize, it will be on the issuing side to enable the banks and payment application providers to get their users to be able to have resilient payments. But it needs to go that way. But before, we were trying to push the whole system, and that was a challenge, because the payment network don't want to pay for the secure wallets, because that's on the issuing side. And unless you have the network behind you, you're not going to create sort of a scale for that solution. But by splitting the solution into two parts, one for the network, which we first enable, and then later we enable one by one banks and payment application providers, then we're finding that way to build the trust, build an interoperable ecosystem innovation. And that's what is now happening.
Thank you so much. And Mika, this is a great segue to bring you in. I'd love your quick comments on what we heard, especially about the brand impact. You're working with global payment networks. You already have experience of having serious concerns with brand related concerns when outages happen, and it impacts them even at the stock market. And then I'd love to ask this question to you. As far as resilience is concerned, it requires collaboration. We've heard that multiple times from everyone who is on the panel today. How can we ensure, both as networks, providers, infra players, even as participants in this particular digital payments ecosystem that we are building out, to ensure that payments remain seamless but also inclusive, access to everyone, like May said, so that every customer, whether it is a consumer or it is a customer who is paying digitally and through any traditional means, whether it is even cash, feels the same level of trust and reliability? How can we ensure that?
Yeah, that's a that's a big question, and thank you for the question. I mean, obviously, it's I currently believe that everyone wants payments to be successful, but I think we're still viewing things as sort of a silo view. So you can take the card schemes, then you have the acquirer, you have the issuer, and some. So many times they sort of look at us. This is we need to be secure, but how do we make it sure that we can share the data between each other? So let's say if there's a network failure, or if using AI to forecast that there's a possibility of something that needs to be maintained and stuff like that, there isn't really too much sharing data. I mean, for example, if we talk about fraud, obviously right now is a big subject that's happening here in Thailand and all over the world, right? Many times there's not a central system that is sharing the data for each other. It's my data, that's your data, and it's not shared to each other. So we talk about like network failures or network resilience, if there's more end-to-end shared data, or some systems that can be interconnected so that you understand that where the failure is also. Many times that we have seen is that there's a failure, then there's an investigation. It takes an hour or two, and nobody can really identify exactly which hop or which connectivity failed, or which part of the system failed. And usually that takes the investigation takes quite a lot of time. Actually, in Thailand itself, the central bank, Bank of Thailand, mandates that within a year, like the mobile apps or the banking systems can only have a disruption maybe a few seconds. They actually monitor it by seconds. And if the bank is or goes over that, obviously they call in the bank and there's some fines and stuff like that. But this doesn't affect. It's not affected to everyone in the payment space. So I think it's something that could be planned or designed that everyone in this end-to-end has responsibility, joint responsibility, same as we see currently. The effort to try to solve the fraud cases that are going on. That there's end-to-end responsibility, not just the bank itself. How about the payment gateway, or how about the actual connectivity, the telcos themselves? Do they have responsibility in sharing that? And then if they had shared responsibility, they would be more proactive in making sure that their network connectivity doesn't fail, or then there is like an orchestration layer that they can switch it to another switch and let the transaction flow out the other side. So I think there's a lot of effort. This subject I don't think has been fully discussed between end-to-end partners, but it's something that would be good to be discussed to make sure that these things don't happen in the future.
Mika, this is such an amazing answer, and our audience is so informed and so clued in. They've actually asked me a question which has come to my DM, and I'd love to be able to address it to you. They say that it's great to hear about resilience in payments, but who should ultimately pay for it? Should it be the banks, the network, the merchants, who end up bearing the cost of resilience in the long run? Who pays for failure?
Yeah, that's something that the current setup each country has its different regulatory requirements and systems. So, even if you look at the current fraud issues that the UK has one policy, Singapore has one policy, Thailand has another policy. So in some countries it's shared between multiple parties who are actually interconnected. Even the social media platforms like Facebook and all that they should have some shared responsibility, because that's really the access point or the channel that is used to communicate or with them, like WhatsApp or whatever. But in some countries, it still goes back to the bank itself and the merchant itself to really control that. So I think it's something that a discussion that should be taken forward, maybe through this session that we have today, that exploring that the shared responsibility, I think, would make that every party in that the point of failure is responsible, and that will be something which is really critical and beneficial to the network.
Absolutely. May, can I get your quick comments on this? Our audience really feels that, or probably have been in the wrong side of this as far as certain operators in the ecosystem are concerned. Who should pay for these kind of failures? Who is responsible?
Yeah, I think that everyone in that flow is responsible. So when we think about payments, it actually get into a lot of different types. So think about soccer. So one goal to another goal. When the ball kicks, it actually goes through different hurdles, and every single hurdles or in the flow do play a role to it. And I do believe that, like I mentioned earlier, resilience is license to operate. And that's my message or my hope, that every single innovator that in the market do take that at heart. It's a shared responsibility, like Mika said. Yeah.
Shared responsibility it is. Joachim, any quick comments on this before we proceed to the next question? Because you've seen it upfront, right? How do operators react when there is failure?
The way I see it is that, shared might be nice, but I think what we need to have is a technology where on the issuing side, there is stored value. You have stored value. If you're going to do offline, you need to have stored value offline. And the way that system is going to be set up will be the responsibility on the issuing side. So it needs to be, I think, on the issuing side that responsibility lies. I think because the risk which we're facing here, who's going to pay for something fraud, it's on the double spending risk will be essentially sitting there. So I don't believe everybody should be sharing it, because that would be a bit I think, unclear. I think the responsibility should lie with the issuing side and making sure that there is enough security around the system that basically the person has in their hands the bearer device to ensure that there is no double spending. And that is what I see in India. They have put in place a regulatory sort of framework, and the responsibility lies with on the issuing side. And I think that's the right way to go.
Excellent. So for everyone who's listening in, do you agree that the issuer should take full responsibility? Or do you agree with May's analogy where it's like passing a football? Everybody in the chain bears responsibility. And like Mika said, social networks, everybody who is participant in the ecosystem has to think about what they're doing and where the responsibility or failure lies. Let us know what you think. But in the meantime, we also have a question, another question actually, and thank you, Daniel, for this question. He asks, how do you reduce settlement time for a seamless journey for the recipients in the payment? And it's very much related to this football, which kind of passes on multiple hops. So who would like to take this question? Mika, can I ask you to start?
Yeah, I'll take the question. To be honest, the settlement time, the current setup with banks obviously is running through working hours and banking hours. I think it's an issue that actually I was just at a Bank of Thailand conference these past 2 days. It was something that was discussed many times also in this conference. It's something that many cross-border payments players want to address and try to fix. Obviously, there is the discussion about using central bank digital currency, CBDC, on a wholesale scheme, which there are many countries which are exploring that, like the M-Bridge project and other projects. But currently, what discussing from with the regional manager of SWIFT yesterday, she was explaining that currently about it's over 80% of the transactions actually are settled within a very fast time, and only to some corridors which are special countries that might have some difficulty where you need to go through a correspondent bank and so forth. But SWIFT now has what they call the GPI tracking, so you can actually track that where the transaction is. But obviously there's an issue about the local receiving party country regulation. So in some countries you would need to do AML, a checking of who the recipient is or the company is and stuff like that. So in some countries that might be delaying the actual settlement. Now, obviously this year, AIs have sort of dropped off the radar, and now stablecoins is the subject of discussion globally. And so there are many, many players right now exploring and actually already transacting, to be honest, using stablecoins as a means of cross-border settlement, and basically using the sandwich scheme, basically fiat to stablecoin, and then fiat to the domestic country where you want to settle the money. So there are efforts to do that, but obviously currently the issue is about standardization. Are you using USDC, USDT, and things like that on what open blockchain or closed blockchain? So there's a lot of efforts to address this issue, and it's quite interesting to see where it will go this year.
Thank you, Mika, for bringing us the absolute latest and hot off the press. May, your quick comments on this as well before we move to Joachim.
Yeah, I think very similar to Mika. I think that I would say that the settlement perspective, depending on what the cost is. So for real-time payment, it is instant, but is it everything that need to be settled immediately? I think that it's that would look at the use cases, but also want to talk about the point that brought up in terms of the using stablecoin. And it is one thing that we are very close watching, because we believe that there's a great use case in the wholesale market for Australia.
Thank you so much, May. And Joachim?
Well, I think if we're gonna do it interoperable and also resilient, I think we have to look at a two-phase process. I think there's been research from MIT, and they are proposing a model which they called two-phase commit. This is what we believe in, that there is a leg first where you can do a transaction and basically clear it offline, clear it without actually settling. So there is first a clearance offline and it's an irrevocable payment, but then settlement can happen later. The fact that you can separate the two things, if we look at real-time payment systems, what they've done is to put everything in one transaction. But that means that creates the vulnerability. This is the problem, the fundamental problem with a real-time payment system, that authorization of the payment and the settlement is sort of happening all at once. And as Mika described in the beginning, unless everything works, it doesn't work. But if you can separate it essentially into a two-step process where you can get a payment done and have it's irrevocable, but there is still a subsequent settlement step, but you are not forcing at the point of payment that settlement to happen. That will help in cross-border transactions, and that would help in if there is any glitch in the system, that you can actually facilitate a payment without worrying about everything that could go wrong in the settlement stage. So fundamentally, it's about to break the process up into a first step, which is like a clearance, which is not on the central ledger, and then you are in a subsequent step settling it. If everything is online, everything works, it will settle immediately. It will. But fundamentally, if you build in that architecture from the get-go, then you are not only supporting when everything works, but you also are supporting when things doesn't work. That is essentially the architecture that needs to be put in place in order to get resilience. We can always build highways up in the back end, like whatever we do that, but it will always have vulnerability of, as Mika said in the beginning, say something is not working, then it still won't work. So you need to fundamentally rethink how the payments is done. And that can be done by adding that resilience layer that you transact in a first leg without settling. And then, so there is a two-step process, just like MIT in their OpenCBDC two-phase commit project proposes.
I love that, because I was going to ask you the question next about what are some of the technologies for this always on kind of experience of interoperable systems. But if I can ask you a part question or a sub question following from what you just said, which is a little bit of friction actually good for users? Because that is something that we keep hearing the debate on. Good, not so great. Real-time payments is supposed to be real-time. What do you think?
Well, sorry, you were breaking up a little bit for me there, Monica. What was the question again? Sorry.
My sub question on this one is that is introducing a little bit of friction actually good? We keep hearing that friction is not great in real-time payment systems. If we have this two-step process that you just described, do you think we should introduce friction still?
Well, our system do not introduce any friction. What it does introduce is seamless working, that if the systems are not go, well, then you transact sort of offline. If the systems are up, then it will immediately settle. But so we're not introducing friction. That's not what I'm for. But we are adding that even if not everything is working, you still should be able to transact. And what happens then is that the actual initiated payment that you have done will potentially stop or sit temporarily in various places in the ecosystem. It could sit with the payee. If you and me transact, Monica, I send to you, you have then an irrevocable payment from me to you that you later, when you get connectivity, you could claim that money. Likewise, if I'm online, but say there is my bank is down, then you can still send my payment up to the backend, and that could be validated. Okay, you made a payment. Right now, the backend system is not up and running, but it can still be an accepted payment. You don't have to fail the payment. It can sit there and wait to be processed in a batch when things are up again. So you need to rethink how it should be done, but you're not introducing friction. You're introducing resilience.
Got it. So May, what kind of challenges do you see in these kind of integrations and innovations that are definitely going to help? But how will collaboration across partners really help us to build
Yeah,
this
so
vision?
before I get to that, I just want to talk like the friction. I think that I do agree that in terms of friction, that would be an intelligence of friction. How can we provide a dynamic to balance the convenience and the safety and the resilience of that? So I just want to comment on that front as well. So the challenge, I would say that it is a challenge because from AV Plus perspective, we run a shared infrastructure, and payment is a network asset. So introducing new features, it actually means that the whole ecosystem has to move together. It does take time. And we have to align with the banks, the acquirers, issuing sides, the fintech around all the standard and then also the risk setting. So I think that is one challenge. When we move, we have to very cautiously to think how we move and the sequence of events as well. And then the second challenge I would say that is a strength, but it's also a challenge, the trust. So every resilience feature has to keep up with the payment flowing without creating the new vulnerabilities. So as mentioned by Mika and also Joseph, that's a stand-in. So stand-in processes that actually help. So we do have from the FPOS perspective, we do have the stand-in process feature and allow the transaction to go through if the bank is temporarily offline. And the challenge building needs the way of the balance of convenience with security. And how like during this time of that, whether it's a bank or the merchant perspective can rely the validity of that transaction. And also the more importantly is that the trust is not being challenged or being perceived in this flow, so that the consumer can never feel that the difference between a bank-approved transaction from this stand-in. So that's an example. And then I think the last point that I want to make that making resilience is that the challenge is that it needs to be invisible to the user, because the user doesn't need to know, because when someone needs to pay or getting paid, it should feel a second nature. It's because of the mean of those things that the payment can is behind as a utility to support that. So it's making that, whether it's a checkout experience, whether it's a subscription experience or receiving a wages, anything that it should be seamless at the service. And I think that is the challenge that we are facing of balancing all these things, and also not forgetting about what is the future risk landscape that may look like.
Excellent. So I want to keep a few minutes for our questions. So maybe I can ask for a 1 minute response on the next question before we take the audience Q&A. So Mika and May, very quickly from you. We are going to move into about the section about actually having these experiments go live and how they can reach scale. So pilots, a lot of pilots happen. And the question really becomes, these pilots become reality also very quickly with the pace of innovation that we are right now seeing in our ecosystem. Now, what are some of the barriers that you have faced or you have experienced in your roles about moving from pilots to from national to cross-border scale? And how can partnerships accelerate the journey? Mika, first comments from you, and then to May.
Yeah, I think one of the big issues is the business model. So I think this is something which is really critical. Some of these pilots, they're done and they say, okay, we're going to do this. It's a nice concept, but then there's no business model behind it to really actually drive traction and make it move in the market. And this business model really needs to serve everyone involved in the transaction. Sometimes it just serves one side, but it doesn't serve the other side. And then it doesn't, there's no interest to actually drive it forward. So I think the business model is really key, and also real use cases. There are a lot of use cases that are, set up and they're not real. I mean, there's just imaginary use cases that are not real. And then actually taking these and testing it out, in the environment where they will be used. Sometimes these sandboxes, they're not tested in the real environments. And so the local domestic people, or let's say if you talk about inclusivity, they don't really get to see the value of it. And so they're not interested in. But I mean, like few cases that I wanted to point out was, about trust, to add on the back of this is like, for example, in Thailand, when you do the prompt pay QR code payment, you need to show your QR code success, transaction on the phone to the merchant. This is mostly to the P2P payments that are being done, or the small merchants. So there's a sort of a trust factor. But nowadays, what we're seeing is that they're showing a fake QR code as success transaction slip.
Yeah.
And so it's a question of trust that, hey, all these fraudsters, they're really making it a bit of a headache. But now, like in India, you have the Soundbox. So Soundbox are maybe coming to Thailand. So some people think that, okay, the Soundbox will say transaction successful, then it means that it's, really successful. But will hackers hack the Soundbox in the future? That's something that's, could be possible. So I think there's a lot of issues, with the security and the trust, once you do a sandbox and you test all these systems, that the end user is very critical to participate and what their fears and concerns. Otherwise, we'll be going back to cash again.
Absolutely. And May, very quick responses from you and Joachim, because we have actually a lot of audience questions. And audience, this is your last chance. Please keep the questions flowing in. We'll reserve the last 5 minutes for you.
Yeah, sure.
May,
So
over
very
to you.
quickly, I think that one example I would like to give is the confirmation of payee. That's which we developed in close collaboration with over 100 banks. The concept is very straightforward, but rolling out nationally has meant agreeing on the standards, on the security protocol, on the customer experience across the whole ecosystems. So I think the partnership is really, really key and making it possible. And resilience through these designs can't be delivered just by any one organization on its own in isolation. So it has to be co-designed, has to be tested collectively, looking at not just the happy path, but all the rainy path that we had to look at that, and to scale and scale with the trust and the reliability. Yeah.
Thank you. And Joachim, last words on this?
Yeah, no, I think when you add something to the payment ecosystem, I think it's good to start on the acceptance side, to have something that works there. Because if you can get the payment network to be able to receive payments, to accept them, and then to process them, then you set a standard there which provides some sort of universal acceptance of the payments. That is the work of the payment network, to set that standard. If you've done that, you have the ability to add banks and payment application providers one by one who follow that standard. And I think we should look at India and what they have done in order to create ecosystems with interoperability. And if we look at essentially what they do, because over the UPI rail now, they settle everything. It is the UPI rail, which is sort of the backbone of the country. And they have now gone out in for interoperability also with the wallets in India, where you have stored value on the wallets and then they need to be interoperable UPI. What did they require to do that? Well, it was only two things. One, the wallet needed to guarantee that there is an intent from the payer to pay, and they do that within their system. And then secondly, the wallet needs to guarantee that the money is there. So only these two things, that there is an intent from the payer and the money is there, then it can interoperate with the UPI rail. What we suggest is that same very simple principle should be taken all the way down to the device itself. So you can guarantee that the money is there. You do that with a stored value in a secure way on the issuing side, and through basically a secure message that goes out of that payment device, you guarantee that there is an intent to pay. But with that, you can create a system which is resilient. It can be interoperable across all rails, but that is the piece that needs to be there. And that's the piece which is not there today. But adding that provides resilience and interoperability over all rails. And the payment network will take the first step by enabling the receipt to be able to receive those payments. And that's what we now are enabling with one of the world's most leading networks in the world.
Thank you, Joachim. We have a lot of questions. I'm going to pick two. Sorry, audience, but I'm going to also combine a few questions. The first one is from Hervé, who actually asked Joachim on on-chain settlement via blockchains and smart contracts using stable coins and CBDCs. And there is an additional question on migrating of the current payment rails to Web 2, Web 3. And there is another question about cold storage with crypto being an answer to everything that we've spoken about. I need a 30-second answer. Who's taking that? Because there's one more question that we need to answer.
I take the Web 2,
So
Web 3 one.
please.
Okay, so in Australia, that we are looking, so there's a project at KCR managed by our Reserve Bank Australia. And one of the use cases that we are looking at is that's the coin to account, account to coin. So that is reaching the Web 2 and Web 3. And so watch this space.
Excellent. Joachim, Mika,
on the
go
other,
ahead.
I think crypto payments sort of is still online payments. So it's still not the resilient payment we are talking about here. What I'm talking about can be interoperable with a crypto system as well, but you haven't really solved much if you just go over to a cryptocurrency from any of those high volume real-time payment systems that we have today. The resilience is simply still not there by just doing that.
Thank you. Mika, quick 10-second intervention, and then there's one more question, please.
Yeah, I'm not sure which one you want to answer, but on the crypto side, I mean, that's obviously still a big question mark all over the world in most central banks, that will they allow that to be a means of payment. So there's a lot of exploratory work going on that, but currently the first step will be using crypto just as settlement between and then locally using fiat currency. That's the current process that most countries are doing, and obviously monetary sovereignty is a big issue that is still up for debate in so many countries. That's happening in Asia, it's happening in the UK, in EU. So I think it's still an open question. So I can't really answer that totally.
Absolutely. We'll go over just the last 30 seconds. There are two questions which again I'm combining these. This is for you. What is your view on confirmation of payee versus payer lookup service, and do you consider lookup service as well in AP Plus? Also, is confirmation of payee only limited to Australia, or is it available everywhere?
Yeah, so confirmation of payee is not only, so our solution is for Australia only, but the solution itself, the services across the globe. So many of the jurisdictions already have those solutions as well. And in terms of the confirmation of payee versus payee lookup, I think that some of the bank already have that type of solution. So just imagine that confirmation payee is another layers of trust on top. And the way that of designing the confirmation of payee do have a bit of a lookup services as well. So I'll leave it there.
Excellent. So I'm not going to be able to wrap up, but I will just say a few words, which is resilience, collaboration, trust, inclusivity, scale. I mean, these are things and common themes that we've heard from all our panelists. And with this, I'll go over to Camilla and request her to close this because she's been hearing all the conversation. Camilla, what stood out for you?
I have no doubt we need to do a take two on this, because specifically getting from the audience those questions coming in the end. Audience, you need to start to chat earlier so we can cover it in. But I mean, this topic is on the forefront all over the globe, so we'll definitely continue this going on. And for those of you who listened to the recording in double speed, I hope you took it down to speed 1 when we came towards the ending. It's been fantastic, Monica, awesome moderation. Joachim, thank you for bringing this topic to us. May and Mika, you made it come so real. And I had lots of questions through, so next time I have to program myself in there so I can ask a question in the middle. But please look out for the quick summary that we'll do on this that we're sharing. And also, if you could, and have your time, just send us a note of feedback on where do you want us to double click in this conversation, because it was very broad and we have to continue on it. But for now, thank you very much. Have a nice morning, evening, afternoon, wherever you are in the world. We speak to you soon again. See you.